What is up, Bills Mafia? Welcome into the Wednesday night edition of Shout, a Buffalo Bills football podcast, brought to you, as always, by Tops Friendly Markets. And we got New Year's coming up here in a couple of days, and Tops is sending season's greetings to all of you. We just had a Merry Christmas. We hope everybody has a Happy New Year. And Tops, the official sponsor of the Shout Buffalo Bills football podcast, is saying cheers to 2024. Check out some of these deals, Ryan. A Pepsi 12-pack of cans. You could buy two of those, get two free right now. Pepsi 2-liter, selected varieties, 4 for $5. You're having a party New Year's Eve? You want to get a couple of drinks? White Claw, Truly, Twisted Tea, Simply Spiked, or Smirnoff 12 packs, $12.99, down from $17.99. You can't beat the deals over at Tops Friendly Markets. Party time savings. Get yourself some Yancey's fancy flavored cheese wedges, $3.99. Fresh Hash avocados, buy one, get two free. Come on, you cannot beat these deals going on over at Tops right now. What is up, Ryan Talbot?
Hey, not too much. Some unbelievable deals at Tops. Might have to pop by there on Sunday after the Bills game on my way home to ring in the new year.
Speaking of bringing in the new year, we're going to get at it a little early on Saturday. The night before the Patriots game, we are going to be live from Wingnuts, 1402 Millersport Highway in Amherst, the new location. We are going to party from 6 o'clock until they kick us out. Come on out. Watch a live show. We'll be hanging out. We'll be having a fan segment. If you want to get involved, send me a message. We'll get that kind of all figured out, and we're going to have a great time. I cannot wait for Saturday night, Ryan.
Yeah, I cannot believe how many Shout insiders have already contacted us saying they're going to be there. They want to be part of the segment. We've heard from a lot of family and friends as well saying they're going to be there. It's going to be one big party on December 30th at Wingnuts.
It is. All right. Speaking of a party, the MVP party got really interesting over the last weekend here. I think everybody going in thought that the odds-on favorite, the betting favorite at least, was Brock Purdy. And I think talking about that is its own conversation. And, what is his value? What is his importance to that San Francisco operation? I think you could probably name two players on the team that are more important to what San Francisco does in that offense. Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel. Earlier this season when Deebo was out for a couple of games, I think the 49ers went on that losing streak. But Purdy throws 4 picks, and I think now out of the MVP conversation, and a lot of stuff is percolating around Josh Allen. And we've seen a couple of big kind of viral conversations happening the last couple of days. Aaron Rodgers came out and made a case for Josh Allen 2 days ago, or yesterday, on the Pat McAfee show. And then today, a little bit of a dust up between Richard Sherman and Keyshawn Johnson on their talk show with Skip Bayless, where I guess Keyshawn Johnson actually walked off the set when Richard Sherman was making his argument where he thought Josh Allen was maybe even more valuable than Lamar Jackson. We're going to get into all of that. That's where I want to start. We're going to also talk about Von Miller, because a lot of people have been asking us about his level of play, what we think about it, what the Bills could do about it. Then we're going to close this thing out with a bunch of fan questions. And if we don't get to all the fan questions tonight, we'll definitely bring a couple of them into the live show on Saturday. Let's start with MVP 2023. Where does Josh Allen stand in your eyes right now?
Yeah, right now I have him slotted at number 2, Matt. I have Christian McCaffrey at number 1. I think this is the year, if you're ever going to go away from giving the award to a quarterback, maybe this is the year that you do it because of Christian McCaffrey's importance to that 49ers offense. He is the guy that really gets them going. You saw how much he elevated them when they acquired him in a trade last year, and how important he's been to this offense since that point in time. After McCaffrey, however, I have Josh Allen. And, listen, I've heard the arguments, the interception totals. Allen is leading the league in touchdowns. The title is called Most Valuable Player. You take Josh Allen off of this Buffalo Bills team, they're not coming close to the playoffs. You can say the same for Lamar Jackson, who is also, right now seems to be one of the favorites. But statistically, the two are not even close in terms of where they're at this point in the season. He's having a fine year, but that defense is winning them a lot of games, as you saw in that 49ers matchup. He's a great player. No one is disputing that, but you would really be taking a step down in terms of the criteria that you generally look for if you give this award to Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, and so as we sit here today, Lamar Jackson is the favorite for the award. He is ahead of Christian McCaffrey, and then it's Josh Allen and Tua Tagovailoa, both at 9-1 odds. I think there's a lot of value on that Josh Allen bet. And if you're asking me, like I put out a tweet 2 days ago, I was critical of Josh after that Bills game against the Chargers. I thought that was a defense that teams have been throwing on, and at times there was just a little bit of erraticness, if you will, to his passing attack. Now, he dialed it in. He had a couple of really excellent throws in that game, really important throws that won the game. But I just think that there's a little bit higher of a level of expectation for Josh Allen at this point of his career. So I came away from that game with, if he makes a couple more throws in that game, I think that it's not as close as it ended up being. Here's the thing for me with Josh Allen. I don't think Christian McCaffrey, I agree with your logic there, but we just know where the state of the award is. And I think that they're going to give it to a quarterback, right? Scoring is down in the NFL this year, and offenses, I feel like, are really struggling. And maybe if there's ever a year where they're going to kind of pivot, Tyreek Hill, had he gone over 2,000 yards, we'll see where the final numbers sit for McCaffrey. I think there could be a play there, because the problem with Lamar that I find is, of course, you have the team success, but it's just that you have the team success. Look at some of the statistics that go along with that team. They're top 4 DVOA in offense, defense, and special teams. All 3 of those units. The Bills, the only top 5 unit in DVOA that they have is the offense, led by Josh Allen. And oh, by the way, Josh Allen, how important is he to the Buffalo Bills in terms of what he's doing? I think you mentioned it. There was a tweet that who put it out earlier? Richard Sherman.
Richard Sherman did, yeah.
And you could talk a little bit about that. But if you look, I went into the numbers here. Lamar Jackson, 6 fumbles this season lost. Allen, 3, right? Allen with 15 interceptions versus Lamar, 7 interceptions. So if you take the total touchdowns, with it's 24 touchdowns for Lamar, 40 for Josh Allen, the touchdown to turnover ratio, Lamar Jackson's is worse. Allen's he's throwing 2.2 touchdowns for every turnover this season. Lamar Jackson, he's scoring 1 touchdown for 1.8 touchdowns for every turnover that he has. So I just think, from a value perspective, from the production perspective, to me, Josh Allen has been the best quarterback in the NFL this year, and it hasn't really been close. Now, the problem is going to be is if we sit here in 2 weeks and say the Bills win 11 games, but they don't win the division, right?
Right.
That argument is going to be really tough against Lamar Jackson, who might not have superior numbers, but his team has the superior finish. They're probably looking at the 1 seed in the AFC, and that could ultimately be the swing factor. But if you want to make an argument that Lamar is more valuable to the Ravens than Josh Allen is to the Bills, I just don't know if the numbers really support that.
No, and I was just finding that tweet from Richard Sherman where he really did do a good job of breaking it all down. He compares the touchdowns to turnovers. Josh Allen, 40 touchdowns, 18 turnovers. Lamar Jackson, 24 touchdowns, 13 turnovers. So a huge margin between the total touchdowns between the two of them. Completion percentage, Josh Allen has him by 0.2 of a point. Total yardage, Josh Allen's up by about 50 yards there. QBR, ESPN, EPA, both favor Josh Allen. And then, percentage of team touchdowns, that's where it really differentiates between the two. Josh Allen's almost at 84%. He's actually slightly over 83.3%, while Lamar Jackson's at 52.2%. So if Josh Allen and the Bills win out, if the Dolphins lose to Baltimore and lose to Buffalo, and the Bills find themselves as the 2 seed in the AFC, 11-6, Josh Allen plays really good football against the Patriots and the Dolphins, I could see a legitimate case where he walks away with the MVP award. Now, I did see some comments in here pre-show about, let's talk more about the postseason MVP. I get it. Josh Allen's focus will be the playoffs, won't be the MVP award. We're just sitting here saying he definitely belongs in the conversation based on where the Bills are now, how important he is to this team, and how he has really helped this team turn things around late in the season.
So some conversation happening in the comments here. I want to touch on that. And it kind of pivots well off of your point, because The Bills have a 89% chance to make the playoffs right now. With a win this week, it goes all the way up to 97%. So with the way that we saw teams play this last weekend, Ryan, like I think it's pretty safe to assume the Bills are probably getting into the playoffs. Like even with 10 wins, there's so many scenarios that could play out. But I also don't know if the Bills are going to lose either of the next two games. But yeah, we're going to talk a bunch about how the season's going to play out. Renee asked, and some members in the chat pointed it out. This is very important to understand. So the Bills' path to a division title, it obviously includes 11 wins. But the only scenario where that works is if Miami also finishes with 11 wins. They would have needed to lose one of their final two of their final three games.
Yeah.
One against Baltimore or one against Dallas. They beat Dallas. So now it comes down to Baltimore. If they beat Baltimore, that literally earns them the AFC East title because they'll be at 12 wins and the Bills can't get there.
No, yeah, that's exactly right. Scott here in the comments saying neither game for the Bills is a gimme. No, they lost to the Patriots early this year, but I'm sure Sean McDermott is reminding his team of that. I'm sure that he has them motivated, knowing the importance of this game in terms of both making the playoffs and also possibly keeping their hopes alive for an AFC East title. So you're right. Neither game is a gimme. The Patriots are playing good ball right now. But the Bills are going to come into this game ready to go, prepared. They're going to be in their last regular season home game of the year. They might end up having a playoff game. We'll wait and see on that. Again, it comes down to winning the East, but I think that this team is going to be highly motivated, and you're going to have a kind of banged up Patriots team, a team missing some pieces or pieces that aren't at 100% going into this matchup.
Speaking of being 100% going into this matchup, man, are the Bills super healthy right now? Coming out of last week, a couple of updates we needed out of Sean McDermott today, and I think it was all good signs pointing towards this week's matchup against the Patriots. Terrell Bernard and Christian Benford were two guys that I was very interested in how they came out of that game. Both of them seem to be doing well. The injury report came out today. Micah Hyde and AJ Epinesa, Sean McDermott said, are both improving, which I think, if you could possibly get AJ Epinesa back, if not this weekend, next week against Miami, to me, that's where I'm really kind of focusing on because, Leonard Floyd, like, it's been weird, Ryan. Like, he's had this unbelievably productive season, but it felt like week after week for the past month and a half, he seems to be getting dinged up in games. And you're wondering, like, how much of a lingering issue there is. He's been on and off the injury report. He's actually on it. He did not practice today with a wrist, rib, and vet rest day. So obviously it's not something that you're overly concerned about. But when you're listed at this point of the year with a wrist, with a rib, it's something that is concerning. Epinesa is improving. And then you have Von Miller, who we're going to talk about here in a few minutes, who is struggling to get back to the version, that he was a year ago. He had a vet rest day today. But all things considered, I think the Bills are in a pretty good spot health-wise.
Yeah, they're in a very good spot health-wise. You're hoping that Epinesa comes back, though, because then it limits the amount of reps you'll see Von Miller out there for, who, as you mentioned, a vet rest day today. You addressed it, or was addressed in the media today about, what is getting him out there on the field, or what are you seeing? And they're saying he flashes every now and then between a lot of ineffective plays mixed in there. So they're still trying to get him back to where he was. But in terms of productivity, it's just not there right now. So Epinesa would give this team a really big boost. As for Leonard Floyd, you said it. He's had a very productive season, over 10 sacks on the year, but he's been dealing with some nagging injuries. So you want to get him out there, but maybe limit his reps if possible, give Greg Rousseau a bigger workload, get these guys as healthy as possible, knowing that, as you mentioned previously, their odds of making the playoffs, as long as they can get to at least 10 wins, are looking favorable right now, but obviously the goal is to get to 11.
Daquan Jones with the pec, he's in his second week with the practice window open, coming off injured reserve, was full participant in practice today. Now, it was a walkthrough, so we'll get a better sense of things tomorrow when the Bills go with pads, and we'll see where he's looking. But Ryan, after practice, he was down at the far end of the field house working with the members of the coaching staff, him and AJ Epinesa, and it looked like a elevated level of individual work. And so I think he is ramping things up. And we heard from Ed Oliver after the game that, like, it's the expectation in the room that he's going to be back here. So I'd imagine there's a slight chance that he could return for the Patriots if he has a really, really good week of practice. I think it would be a welcomed addition. Now it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of shake things up on the interior, because I thought Poona Ford had himself a really solid game last week, but maybe they just look to, bring back Daquan Jones slowly, but they'll have to make a corresponding move. And we could talk a little bit about that right now. The Bills activated Kyer Elam today, which is, I think, something we both expected them to do.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't ever going to release him and try to get him on the practice squad. I know that was suggested by some people. He wouldn't have cleared waivers. Shutting him down for the year is also a dangerous move, because we saw it in the last game. Christian Benford gets hurt. If you have one more injury in that game, you don't have another true boundary cornerback to throw into the game opposite of Dane Jackson or Rasul Douglas, however it ended up shaking out. So now Elam's in the mix, and he is that kind of insurance down the stretch if you need more boundary corner. But beyond that, where do the Bills go here with another roster spot when they do decide to activate Daquan Jones? Because they had 5 defensive tackles on the active roster earlier this season. I don't think they're going to cut Poona Ford or Linval Joseph. I think they're going to go with 5 DTs. They're going to have to find it somewhere else.
Yeah, and once they activated Elam today, and the conversation changed to where do the Bills go from here, you kind of look up and down their roster, and you could probably make a case for offensive line. They're pretty heavy there in terms of their numbers. Jermaine Ifedi, for example, has been on this roster all year long, has been a inactive, a healthy scratch, and inactive all year. And I know, if something were to happen to one of your tackles, you want a guy like that, but he's more likely to clear waivers and be someone you could add to your practice squad than maybe an Alec Anderson, a younger guy where a team could say, we liked him, we were higher on him. But it's tough, because when you look at the numbers, you look at this roster, they're light at certain positions where you say, well, that's not going to be the position that they go to. That you mentioned they went with 5 D tackles earlier this year. I think that's the plan still as well. So for me, it might come down to one of their extra offensive linemen. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's probably the safest way to go. You could also maybe even have, it's interesting. Like, if this were any other player in any other year, like, wouldn't DeMar Hamlin maybe be a candidate?
Yeah.
Because if you have Micah Hyde coming back, he has been the 5th safety this year. Cam Lewis has played ahead of him. They obviously brought in Taylor Rapp, but I just don't see a scenario where they feel comfortable cutting him, knowing everything that he's been through and the work that he's put in to come back. I think he's probably somebody that you can get to the practice squad, but it's not like an easy fit. And when he's been inactive for most of the season as well. And I just think with those numbers there, that would make the most sense. The other issue is from an elevations perspective. I think you have to hold so many offensive linemen on the active roster. So if you were to cut one of those offensive linemen, it might mess with that game day inactive numbers. I got to look at the rules again. And I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know how many players they have on the roster, but I think to your point, I think they'll be fine with Alec Anderson and Ryan Vandermark. I think that's the natural place to go. You have David Edwards and Ryan Bates. I think if you go with 9, they've done that in the past. I think it probably ends up being Jermaine Ifedi.
Yeah, and to the Hamlin point, it makes sense other than everything he's been through. But at the same time, these stingers that Micah Hyde have been dealing with, I don't want to say they're easy to get, but the physical style that you have to play in the NFL, the fact that it's been a recurring theme, it could pop up again. And while Hamlin has not really been playing defensive snaps, he has been an active roster participant on special teams when that has happened. So that could be another reason for maybe saving his spot on this roster.
No, that's a great point. And not only Hyde, but Taylor Rapp too, who had that really nasty neck injury himself like a month ago. So that's something to keep in mind too. And Hamlin offers really great depth. And again, like, I'm not advocating for it. Like, I think it's amazing what he's done this year. And I think, he's played on special teams and gotten his opportunities that way, continue to work his way back. I think that from a mental perspective, just think about, like, how many of these just game day situations going through these are benefiting him for the long term, as he kind of like, he's probably going to be a completely different player next season, having put in this whole season together, having all this tape that he's actually been able to kind of put out there. I mean, if he ends up playing even say 150, 200 snaps regular season, including special teams, I mean, that's absolutely huge.
Yeah, absolutely huge, especially considering where he's been and what he went through. For him to be able to come out there and obviously odds-on favorite comeback player of the year. But going back to the original point of the discussion, Matt, Daquan Jones, I think that ideally the Bills would like to get him some snaps in the regular season, knowing that if they get into the playoffs, how important he's going to be, how much they'd like to get him onto the field. And the only way to ramp him up is to get him out there. So if he does have a really good practice today, or excuse me, tomorrow and Friday, yeah, there's a chance that he's elevated or, brought back to the main roster for the Patriots game. I definitely think that the Miami game is circled on the calendar as one that he will certainly suit up for, but the corresponding move will be interesting.
Sean McDermott was asked a pretty direct question today, and that is what part 2 of this podcast is all about. What have you seen from Von Miller that warrants the playing time he continues to get? I think it was over 30 snaps against the Chargers. And man, Ryan, I can't point out a single play, maybe save for one instance if I'm remembering it, where he made any kind of impact whatsoever. And it's one of those situations where we're getting to a point in this deal where it's such a premium, important position in terms of the offenses they're going to face down the stretch into the playoffs, that if you have somebody that you're allocating 30 snaps for, and who knows, maybe they get into the playoff games and they have an healthy AJ Epinesa and Floyd and Rousseau, and they don't have to give as many snaps to Von, that's fine. And maybe you're hoping that in 10 or 15 snaps, you can get an elevated amount of impact. We'll see. Here's what Sean McDermott said to that direct question. I understand where you're coming from on that. It's just with Von, he'll flash here, he'll flash there, something that Eric Washington said a few weeks ago. And he's dealing with a lot, right. I commend him from just what he's been working through and the knee. Playing time is earned, and he knows that, which I thought was interesting. So he continues to work hard at getting himself just right to continue to improve. So, I mean, if we pick through this thing here, sure, I get it. Commending him for, trying to come back, and maybe he still isn't at a place where he feels healthy enough, but I just don't know if that's good enough at this stage. It's a premium position. It's an important position. I mean, Brandon Beane was asked about this a couple weeks ago too, and talked about how difficult it is to come back from this injury. And I get it. And to this point, the defensive line, you have other guys stepping up. Ed Oliver's been really good. Floyd's been great. Rousseau's been great. Epinesa, when healthy, has been great. My issue is we still don't know what it looks like with any kind of elevated role for Kingsley Jonathan, right? If you were to take away 20 of those snaps and just give them to Jonathan and see what it looks like on a game day, why, what are you so opposed to doing that and then making the decision? He said it himself in there. Sean McDermott said, he knows that playing time is earned. I think you can make an argument right now that Von Miller is not earning playing time other than making the sacrifice to come back, but sometimes the sacrifice isn't worth it.
Yeah, he hasn't really earned the playing time based on what we've seen on Sundays the past few weeks, or on Saturday, as in last week's game. The impact has been minimal. There might be a rush that, pushes the tackle back, or he gets close to the quarterback. There are a few snaps where he was playing contained, so he wasn't necessarily going after the QB, but for the most part, you're seeing when he is trying to get after the quarterback, he's taking the wide route around, or his pass rush arsenal just isn't working. The tackle's keeping him in front. The only thing I'll say, and listen, I would love to see Kingsley Jonathan get a chance at a bigger role as well, is Sean McDermott and Eric Washington are out there at practice every single day when they're watching these guys, and maybe they're just not seeing enough from Kingsley Jonathan to say, okay, let's take a few reps away from Von Miller. Let's give him an elevated role. Let's sit Von Miller for a game and make him a healthy scratch to let him kind of compose himself and try to watch from afar and see if maybe that helps him out. So maybe it comes down to just the practices themselves, and Jonathan hasn't done enough to kind of warrant the playing time. But man, it's tough to argue for Von Miller too, based on the lack of production in game.
Yeah, and I think what you just said is really important, like what they're seeing in practice. Maybe they're seeing enough in some of those competitive practice situations, like those are maybe some of the flashes. Because Scott says it in the comments here, like I haven't seen any flashes, minus a play a couple games ago. I think it was the Chiefs game where we noted a couple of impact plays that he made. And I think you're just hoping that he kind of rounds into that form in the playoffs. And so I get all that. And you're right. They're probably seeing, I'm sure that given everything that's happened with him off the field, playing him in general is this kind of, it feels like a risk without knowing the whole situation. Obviously, the Matt Ariza situation that happened a couple of years ago, they have some experience in that department, and they've obviously had a lot of time to weigh this decision. So it'll be interesting to see how this story plays out and how they kind of correspond. And even if it isn't impacted by the off the field stuff, like how they view this, if we get to the end of their season and we haven't seen any type of like sustained success from Von Miller, like how does that change the conversation around the player this offseason? Because they are financially tied to him next year. I mean, it's going to be, I think you can save like maybe a few $1,000,000 if you were to make him a post June 1st cut. But again, the dead cap money next year even is still absolutely massive. And, I still think that there is a world we can live in where Von finds it with an off season where he could spend all of his time preparing for training camp, training for training camp, and then going out there and getting all those reps back that he missed this last year. But he's going to be 35 years old. I mean, that's a part of it too. Everybody talks about Bruce Smith and the way that he played into his middle to late 30s. But I don't know if there was that massive injury that he had to work his way back from at any point in his like last few years.
Yeah, when it comes to Von Miller, like you said, most likely on the hook. And I don't see the Bills moving on from him because of the dead cap. But I will say in the NFL, teams, if they really want to, they'll find a way to eat the dead cap. They'll spread it out over a year or two. You look at what's going on in Denver right now, the fact that they benched Russell Wilson for the last 2 weeks to avoid injury, and that, it's coming out now that it looks like his tenure is going to be over this offseason. They're going to come, and there's a massive dead cap hit with that deal.
The Broncos, you're telling me, has said, let's stop the ride?
Let's stop the ride. Let's ride the bench for those 2 weeks. So whatever the case may be, that's a huge contract that they're just going to eat the dead cap. And, maybe Sean Payton, that is, has a promise from the ownership that you get a few years here to right the ship, and he can do that. The Bills are already in a tough spot, though, cap-wise. I think more realistically than not, you keep him here for the 2024 season. Then you can get out of the deal after 2024. I know it was a 6-year contract, but when, people really broke it down and said it's really a 3-year deal that the Bills can get out of at that point. After year 3, fully anticipate it, but considering the amount of money that they would have to eat, I think realistically he'll be on this roster next year. And like you said, he'll have a full offseason to work on it. Maybe despite the cap hit, you give him more of a limited role next year if you're able to bring back Epinesa, or if you draft someone to kind of rotate with him, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, if you don't want to spend a ton of money on the Shout Insider text line deal, you don't have to, because you get a 2-week free trial, and then it's only $3.99 a month after that. If you are on board for 12 months, it's $50. I mean, at this point, Ryan, what is that, like 7 cups of coffee at Starbucks?
It feels crazy. That way.
It does feel that way. The Shout text line is brought to you by the Litro Law Group and Carrie C. Byer. He is an attorney with the law offices of Francis M. Litro, located at 237 Main Street, Buffalo, New York. If you or someone you know is seriously injured, give Carrie a call at 716-852-1234. Let them know the Shout Boys sent you, or check out litrolaw.com. All right, Ryan, we're going to take some fan questions from the Shout Insider text line. We got a lot here, and there was a bunch of questions that came along on Stefon Diggs. So we will kind of pair those all together. One came from John McLeod. He said, can we do more? Can the Bills do more to get Diggs in better spots on the field? From what I see, the Bills tried screen passes which have been a disaster. Any other ideas? The other one, any thoughts on Diggs' decline in efficiency? This comes from Mike Paul, the past 4 games and his injury status. Could he be working through a nagging injury? Also, Dalton Kincaid's drops, are they due to thumb injury or a concussion? Ronald Bickelman asks, why has Stefon Diggs been phased out of the offense second half of the season since Joe Brady took over as offensive coordinator? Do you anticipate more production in the playoffs from Stefon Diggs? Where do you want to start there, Ryan, on Diggs?
Well, let me quickly address Dalton Kincaid. I think the drops were an issue of the gloves that game, the thumb injury kind of corresponding together, and then as of late, kind of a lack of involvement too. If the ball's not coming your way, you might not have those sure hands. But let's get into Stefon Diggs. I guess let's start with the original question. Can the Bills do anything to use him a little bit differently? Yeah, absolutely. You can move him pre-snap. You can you're not going to necessarily use him the way that the Dolphins, for instance, use Tyreek Hill, where he gets like the head start, it feels like. But you can move him pre-snap and get him into a more advantageous spot. You can line him up in the slot. You can do different things with him other than that as well. But those are 2 things that come to mind right off the top of the head. In terms of his inefficiency over the past few weeks, I think right now it's kind of a game plan driven, matchup type driven thing for Joe Brady, where he goes into every game and he says, okay, well, here are some of their weaknesses. Look at the Dallas game. I think they wanted to emphasize the run. And then as it was working in game, they really stayed with it. So no one really got too many opportunities in that one. In this past matchup against the Chargers, it wasn't necessarily working up until late in the game, where they had to kind of spread the ball around and Diggs came up with a huge 3rd down catch. It's just based on the matchups. And the longer that Joe Brady is here, I guarantee you he's working on ways to get his number 1 receiver more involved in this offense. So I don't think he's just sitting there and saying, I'm going to phase our best weapon out of the offense. That would be wild. That'd be crazy. But at the same time, he's also trying to find ways to make sure that Josh Allen is utilizing James Cook in the passing game, and that Khalil Shakir is getting some opportunities, that when Gabe Davis isn't blocking, he gets some targets his way. And now you have Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid at tight end. So there's a lot of mouths to feed, but as time goes on, as he starts implementing little bits and pieces of his own offense, sprinkling it in to what he inherited, I guarantee you'll see a little bit of an uptick in opportunities for Stefon Diggs.
So there's a lot here to unpack. First of all, the injury part of things, because there's at times I've wondered myself, like, is something going on with Diggs, just from the sense that, like, there's a lot of times, like, I feel like this has been more prevalent over the last 2 seasons. This isn't just a Joe Brady thing. There's been times when he's been off the field on 3rd downs, or like important downs for the passing game, where I've just been like, what's going on? Why is he not out there? One that comes up is actually the Shakir catch on 3rd down, 3rd and 4, not the one down by the goal line, the one that was like behind him over like on a quick slant pattern. Diggs was off the field, James Cook was off the field, and Kincaid were all off the field on the same play. And it's like, man, like, that just doesn't seem like the wisest usage of personnel. But I do think that there's a method to the madness. Like, go back to Joe Brady's roots here, from where his star really started to take off. It was at LSU. It's when he had Jamar Chase, he had Justin Jefferson, and had a way to get the ball to all of those superstar receivers somehow, some way. I think that there could be something else going on here. And now I mentioned the injury part because Sean McDermott kind of put the kibosh on that today. And he said that he's not dealing with anything. So we have to take him at his word. I'm hoping to chat with Diggs tomorrow. We'll see. He didn't want to talk last week. So we'll see if we get a chance to speak with him tomorrow. And I think that will shine some light on some of this. But the other piece of this too is just like, I feel like the Bills have been really trying to create another version of themselves. I know Sean McDermott said they're starting to understand what their identity is, but to me that feels like, okay, there's more to our identity than just Josh Allen going superhero mode. And so if that ends up being the case and you have multiple ways to win, the easiest pitch to bring out in every at-bat is Josh Allen to Stefon Diggs. Like, it's been a tale as old as time. Do you want to make the argument that he's lost something, that he's lost his step, that he's not winning at the same rate? I looked at his separation numbers on Next Gen Stats to see if there's been a big drop-off from last season. There hasn't been. It's still around 2.8 yards. I think the top number in there is at like 4.7 or something like that. And I don't even know how many routes run that is. Dalton Kincaid is actually up there. He leads all Bills in yards of separation at 4.0 yards, which I thought was interesting. But listen, I saw a comment in here too, like, are the Bills phasing out Stefon Diggs because of all the offseason stuff and like the distractions and stuff? Like, I don't think you put a captain mark on Stefon Diggs and then in the same season look to phase him out of the offense. Plus, I think like Diggs's game is going to age like a fine wine in the NFL because there's so many different things you could do with him. Once he like kind of pivots from being this ultra like consistent boundary guy, I think he's got a twilight to his career in the slot, like that, predominantly where he's playing out of there almost like the majority of his snaps. So all this is to be said that I don't know that even though it has been 2 months of like, what's going on here? I don't think he's been phased out. He's had 11 targets or more in 2 of the last 4 games. And listen, the last 2 games where he didn't have those kinds of numbers, the Bills just haven't been throwing it at the same amount. And I think that there's still something definitely to be harken back upon once they get to the playoffs, when teams are having to prepare for all these other things you mentioned.
Yeah, that's a perfect transition, Matt, because you look at a team like the Patriots going into this weekend. What has the Patriots' goal been the past few years when facing the Bills? Try to phase out Stefon Diggs. And has it always worked? No, absolutely not. There were some games where he absolutely went off against that defense. But they always try to take your best weapon away. But you're going to go into this game on Sunday, and now Belichick's going to be watching some of the film over the past few weeks and say, man, James Cook is a lot more involved in this offense than he was in the first match where he had 13 carries for 56 yards. He's going to say, well, they've done a really nice job of spreading the ball around, getting some other guys involved that some weeks they're on, some weeks they're off in terms of production. So there's more layers for this Bills offense in terms of how they can move the ball up and down the field. You have Josh Allen who can hurt you with his arm and his legs. So it's going to create more guys like Belichick and defensive minds in terms of how do we stop this offense based on what we've seen with this Bills team under Joe Brady. But at the same time, yes, Diggs is going to get his targets this week against a banged up secondary, next week against Miami, who he's had a lot of success against. But they're also going to try to hurt you with James Cook and Kincaid and Knox and company.
Let's go to Kyra Sal with the next question here. Is Leonard Fournette the best option on kickoff returns? And then what are your thoughts on the utility of Deontay Hardy? I don't feel he's bringing much to the table. Where do you want to start with it, Ryan?
Well, Fournette, if I remember correctly, I heard on the broadcast on Saturday that was maybe his first return since LSU. I'm not sure if I'm I'm not a huge fan of him being utilized in kickoffs. I know he's only 28 years old. This is not something that he's made a regular occurrence of doing in the NFL. I think he's fine. Deontay Hardy obviously had a big-time fumble last week. I feel like on punts, he might be overthinking it. He catches the ball, and he's trying to do a little bit too much at first, and sometimes that leads to very minimal gains. He hasn't been able to utilize that game-breaking speed, but I would still kind of rather have a different option on kickoff returns than Fournette. And when it comes to Hardy on the punt returns, one fumble doesn't define a player. He's been pretty solid in terms of protecting the ball, at least even if the returns have not necessarily gone for big yardage.
Yeah, and I think that was a situation where that guy in that role has been back there all season. I didn't really think Damian Harris really fit into that role when he was back there. And Ty Johnson's a little bit better there. He's a little bit quicker, faster, adds a little bit more in that dynamic. I think Fournette was back there, and he's a reliable guy. To me, it felt like a Micah Hyde move, right? Like put him back there because he's probably not going to screw it up. And most of the time, you're taking a touchback as well. The Deontay Hardy deal is funny because, man, haven't there been like 3 or 4 plays this year where you see the flash and you're like, wow, could you imagine if they can get this worked into the offense? And to me, that's something that they've been missing the most since Brian Daboll left, was like finding a way to really find roles for everybody in the offense. Like, I felt like the peak of it was probably 21, early 21, late 2020, where Beasley had a defined role. Brown had a defined role. Even Davis in his like supplemental role was a defined role, and he found a way to have success in it. And then you look at obviously Diggs and then Dawson Knox as well. And I feel like this is a more dynamic offense now with more talent, but they've been unable to really find roles for Hardy and Trent Sherfield. And to me, that comes down to the offensive coordinator. Now, Joe Brady is hustling to catch up, right? Like he didn't have a whole offseason to plan this. Like he wasn't a part of, earmarking certain players that he thinks would be, important to add to the offense. He probably had a voice in there, especially with his receivers background, but maybe he'll have more of an active role in that if he's the main guy calling the shots on offense going into next season. But yeah, I'm not willing to just call this Deontay Hardy idea a complete bust, though. I know he's under contract next year as well. You can get out of it. But I still would probably bring him around just because I do think that there's something dynamic to his game, and he showed flashes. And when he's had those flashes, it's been really good.
Yeah, I think it was Jacksonville game where the offense wasn't doing much, and then they threw a deep ball to him down the field, and he made a play on it. And we sat there and said, well, why aren't we seeing more of that in this offense? We really haven't seen it again since that point. I think there was one other deep ball that went his way, and I think it might have been gone for an interception. But he's had some short catches where he's been able to get up and move the chains. It's just been an opportunity situation where I think that Khalil Shakir has overtaken his reps and deservedly so. Everything we've seen from Khalil Shakir in terms of the route running, knowing when to break off of a route on that second third down play that he made late in the game to move the chains to really kind of almost seal the game for Buffalo, put him in a spot to kick a chip shot field goal and take most of the time off the clock. He's done all the little things this offseason and into year two that's keeping guys like Deontay Hardy and Trent Sherfield off the field, or their rep count is extremely limited.
All right, let's go to the next question here, Mr. Talbot. We're streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Please, on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel as well. We're creeping up there. We're almost to 10K there, Ryan. That'll be pretty cool. Milestone for us here on Shout. I saw somebody in the comments mention the fact that we're going during a Sabres game. I apologize, although listen, you never know what you're going to get with the Sabres. So this could be a nice alternative. They're having one of those down nights. Just tune in to Shout, get a little Bill stock. Why not?
We bring the consistency. Sabres,
bring the consistency. So exactly. All right, next up, let's go to Thomas Hewitt, who says, when are you going to use your ability to influence for Wingnuts to open a restaurant in New Hampshire? The wings are terrible around here.
I don't know how much influence we have at this point. We'll make a note of it, though, on Saturday, saying, hey, they really want one in New Hampshire. The way that Wingnuts has expanded in Western New York, it wouldn't shock me if this ended up being a franchise that pops up in a lot of different places. So we'll keep you in the loop and let you know what they say.
Well, I'm sure the Barstool folks are itching to get a location in the greater Boston area, so or New York City. So it would not surprise me at some point the Wingnuts just went absolutely crazy and expanded outside the market. But we are excited about the show this Saturday night at the new official home of Wingnuts, 1402 Millersport Highway, in Amherst, across from the Marriott, right by the University of Buffalo. Come out, have a great time with us. Jesse Allen asks, what do you think of the running back situation? We'll break down with Cook, Johnson, Murray, and Fournette against the Patriots. Could Murray be a healthy scratch? Lenny sure looks like he had some juice. Is Cook another fumble away from being in Sean McDermott's doghouse?
I don't think so. And for the last part of the question, it's hard to put a guy in the doghouse that's third in rushing yards in the NFL, and then like third or fourth in total yards from scrimmage. He's been so productive for them all season. And yeah, the fumbles were a concern last week. I guarantee you the Patriots are going to be trying to punch it out every attempt that they have, and it's up to Cook to respond. But he's been so productive. He's been their best back by far. As for the Latavius Murray part of the question, I think you're more likely just to see Ty Johnson return, Leonard Fournette maybe stay on the practice squad, not be an elevation that is for game day, and roll with what's been working for you, because I felt like they missed Ty Johnson last week and the juice that he's given them on offense when he's had the ball in his hands. He has that speed to take it outside. He's been productive between the tackles. He can catch the ball. And, oh, by the way, he can handle kickoffs as well. So he's really come up here this season and done a nice job of producing for this team when they needed him the most.
One thing I'll add there on the running back Ty Johnson note, he was limited again today. Now, it was only a walkthrough. He was in red all last week, was inactive. That's what allowed Fournette to get his call up. I wouldn't be surprised against a team like the Patriots if they want to run it back with Fournette and give him another game and take it slow with Ty Johnson. So I'll give it a chance. But I think when Ty Johnson's ready to go, he's going to be back in there because I think he kind of elevated himself to like the number 2 running back. Will the Bills make a change at returner? Deontay Hardy is getting paid a lot of money to be a returner. What about giving Andy Isabella a call up? I don't know. I think Andy Isabella, they kind of flirted with that a couple weeks ago, and it didn't stick. So maybe, again, that's a situation, Ryan, where just not doing enough to overtake Hardy. And I do still think there's some juice to Hardy's game. So we'll see.
Yeah, I like Andy Isabella's game. I like the feel-good story that he provided this summer. But again, if the Bills really thought that he would bring more to this offense, they either, one, would have elevated him more than what we've seen this season, or two, they would have found a way to sign him to the main roster at some point. So I think they're happy with what they have on the practice squad. I think that he could easily sign a futures reserve deal at the end of the year and come back in and compete for a roster spot next year. But I don't necessarily think that he's going to come in here and make some big time plays for them down the stretch in the regular season and or playoffs.
Why doesn't Shakir get more snaps? He had a few splash plays this year, and I actually agree. And I asked Sean about Khalil today, and he's just been impressed with him. And he talked about him being a guy in the locker room that other guys, root for. Like, he's one of the most well-liked guys in the locker room, Sean McDermott said. And, you kind of take a peek through his season, and you've seen a couple of games where he's really popped, 115 against the Jets in a win. He had the 92 in a win against the Tampa Bay Bucks. Some of his bigger performances, 45 against the Chargers win, have been in Bills wins. And so I do think getting him the ball, finding a way to target him as well is something that I don't think that the Bills are necessarily not trying to do that. I just think it's a challenge knowing who else is in this offense. And, I don't think you ever want to get into a run of games where he's playing 14% of the snaps, 17% of the snaps, 13% of the snaps, like he did in the Philly, Kansas City, Dallas game. Then they brought him up to 23% against the Chargers. But I just don't see, with the way the roster is constructed, ever getting into a place about like 50% this season.
I agree. The personnel packages, the fact that you're going heavy at times, as good of a blocker as he's developed into being at wide receiver. You want to keep Gabe Davis out there on snaps like that. You might feel better about Trent Sherfield in certain roles as well, in terms of run blocking. That's not even what the question was about. It's about giving him more run as a wide receiver. But like you said, you have Stefon Diggs, you have those tight ends, you have Gabe Davis, you have James Cook. It's just tough right now. It's kind of a numbers game right now. Could I see him having a much bigger role in year 3? Yes, because of everything that could go on with Gabe Davis potentially leaving in free agency, the Bills possibly drafting a wide receiver, but making him earn a bigger role. So I think that next year you'll see him get an uptick, maybe in that 20, 25 snaps per game, if not a little bit higher than that. But right now it's just based on the personnel that they currently have and the way that they're running this offense.
Next one was from Jennifer. We already kind of touched on Epinesa and Hyde updates. And I did message you, Jennifer, about the live show in Syracuse. We were just outside of Syracuse at Turning Stone last week. We'd love to get back there. That'll be something we talk about in the new year. But hey, if anybody has any ideas about Syracuse, popular place that you think would be great to host the Shout podcast, reach out, let me know. I'll get in contact with them. And, Ryan and I are always open to coming back to some of the markets around New York, Central New York, Western New York, all of it.
Yeah. Send us your possibilities. See what I did there?
Get out. Just get out.
Listen, I'm just trying to get a show there, maybe.
I
I'm a
mean,
fan.
I don't know if that is conducive to the Shout brand, because everybody's gonna go in there, they're gonna crush a bunch of pasta, and then everybody's gonna kind of like, everybody's gonna need a nap. Okay. Now
That's fair.
Possibilities is great. I can't say anything negative about them, and if I did, my wife would be very upset. Um, Mark Counterman asks, has there been any update on the status of Damian Harris? No.
No.
I think the last time Sean was asked about it, he basically mentioned that there was no update there. And I think we're getting to the point this season, Ryan, where like, you know, you take your time. If you're Damian Harris, that was a really serious neck injury. You probably don't want to rush back to it because, listen, for as much as it's tough to play safety, of course, there's plays, 40% of the plays where maybe you don't have to, be involved in a hit. If you're a running back, when you're out there, pretty much 100% of the time, you are driving your neck, your head into the situation. So I think that it's probably going to be a little bit more of a waiting game on Harris.
Yeah, and listen, serious neck injuries are always serious. I know that after that game, they got good reports on it, but this is a guy that was a brand new father, probably has a lot to think about, wants to take it very easy. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see him in a Bills uniform again this year. And who knows? There's a lot of in terms of life after football. So Harris could be weighing a lot of different options right now, and you have to respect it, whatever it is. And the Bills kind of stumbled upon Ty Johnson due to the injury. He's been great for them. Latavius Murray's been a steady contributor. And love Caitlin's comment here, Matt.
Yeah, Caitlin's weighing her options right now, actually. Talking about possibilities or divorce. Listen, I didn't say you can't go there. You can pregame at possibilities. I just don't know if they're gonna be able to fit a Shout podcast in there. But hey, somebody reach out, send a little birdie over there, see if we can make it happen.
That's right. The spicy chicken riggies. Can't say enough good things.
Oh gosh, they're so delicious. Final question, RJ, our good buddy. Which player out of all the injured ones has the best shot to join the club for the playoffs? And obviously, Matt Milano's in that category. I'd rule him out. I'm going Daquan Jones. I think we're like I talked about earlier in the show. I think we're just about there.
Yep, I agree. Daquan Jones. I mean, if you're throwing Micah Hyde into that equation too, I think he's pretty much a lock too at Epinesa. But if we're talking about guys that have been out for some period of time, by far, I think it's Daquan Jones. I think he's going to be ramped up here late in the regular season, whether it's this weekend, next week, or just next week against Miami, before potentially playing in the playoffs, if obviously the Bills get in.
Sheila in the comments says that Caitlin is weighing my options, making sure that she knows that that's clear there. So great stuff. Great show tonight. The Staple Show, Wednesday night in your life, brought to you by Tops Friendly Markets. And this right now, you could download the Tops Markets mobile app and get the most out of your shopping experience. Check out all the amazing benefits you have at the palm of your hand. Select your preferred store, browse and shop the weekly ad or by specific department. Easily locate products at your preferred store with its built-in aisle directory. Enjoy contactless shopping with Tops Grocery Pickup or delivery services. Clip digital coupons directly to your Tops Bonus Plus card and easily reorder your favorite items from previous purchases. Download the Tops mobile app today. Visit topsmarkets.com/mobile app for more details. LL Bundy, which I'm guessing is our guy, Big Stud Bundy over on the wing eating champion of the world, is asking if there'll be any tangy Talbots in the house on Saturday. Listen, the most we could do, Ryan, is put in a good word with our good buddies AJ and Chris and see if they can't make it happen.
That's right. I haven't seen the specials for this week, so fingers crossed. Some tangy Talbots on Saturday night. See my Aunt Donna in the comments. Happy New Year, Aunt Donna. But yeah, Saturday night, Bills Mafia, join us, whether the tangy Talbots are there or not. This tangy Talbot will be there. We are going to have a great time. December 30th, Wing Nuts, one night before Bills Patriots.
I think you're going to be more spicy than tangy on Saturday night. So maybe we'll have to come up with a different wing for you this Saturday night. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. He's Ryan. I am Matt. Thank you so much for watching Shout. Enjoy the rest of your holiday week here, and we will see you on Saturday at Wing Nuts. Take care, everybody.